We're delighted that Phil Lynch has accepted our invitation to take up the CEO role and to combine his proven leadership skills with those that Daniel has demonstrated as Chief Scientific Officer. In Phil and Daniel, we have an exceptional amalgamation of skills. Both are gifted communicators. Phil, in terms of our integrated vision for the company and total commitment to shareholder value. Daniel, with regard to the multi-layered scientific and clinical value that we're unlocking at Race. As chairman and the deal guy, if you will, I'm thrilled at the prospect. Both Phil and Daniel will be instrumental in positioning the company for downstream market engagement and deal making. So we've got exciting times ahead at Race, that's for sure.
Yeah, I came in as an investor into Race. I did due diligence on all the listed biotech companies. I normally invest in mining companies. I have a background in biotech, and so when I was doing due diligence on all listed companies, I found Race, and I thought this was an amazing opportunity. Bisantrene is a very interesting drug. The opportunity that the company created was amazing, but it had been not recognised by the market. I cornerstoned their raise in August of last year, and I was invited onto the board. And at that time, Race was lacking a CSO, Chief Scientific Officer, and so I took on that role as a part-time until my outside role as CEO of Nucleics. Nucleics is a private biotech company that I own and run. It's been around for about 20 years. We make software in the DNA sequencing area. Since that time, I've had to take on the role of COO on an interim basis, and that has really loaded me up as far as workload goes. And it's been quite a ride over the last 12 months. So it's been very, very interesting.
I've been working with the board on the nominations committee, and the first thing to say is that the interim management that we had in place, largely Daniel and John working together, I mean, they've done a great job, but frankly, they've been working harder than they should, and they've both got their own respective interests that they equally need to manage. So the right thing to do was to get a change. We had a look at the requirements, the capabilities that we would need in a new leader for the business. And as we scoped that, it equally became apparent that finding someone was going to take a long time. And equally, it would mean we'd have to face onboarding and landing the right candidate. And given we're a very small company, having the right person leading the business is really critical. So interestingly, when the board looked at the capabilities, we said, hang on, potentially we've got a solution around the table. And that solution is to continue to leverage Daniel's scientific leadership and for me to get involved beyond an NED capacity to contribute effectively leading the commercial agenda. So it's an interesting model. It's different perhaps, but we actually think it offers Race an optimal solution. We're calling it shared leadership. We work together already on an interim capacity closely over the last sort of weeks and months. And we think going forward that we're going to spend a lot more time together in Sydney, and we're going to drive the operational agenda efficiently. I've been a commercial leader with Johnson & Johnson for over 30 years, originally as a marketer, but in recent decades as a general manager, managing director. I've done that largely in Asia. So I would say to you that a combination of leading people in Asian markets are probably two things that are going to be important, I hope, to Race. We have European and, of course, US interests and opportunities for our business, but Asia is something we shouldn't forget. I spent most of my career in Asia, and I think there are big opportunities in Asia that potentially we could tap into for Bisantrene and the opportunities it offers.
there's actually a number of benefits from this model. We avoid the problem of actually the onboarding and the time that would take. We're a small company, we've got a big plans ahead of us, and to go out and try and recruit a new CEO and get them up to speed on all the technical details this is going to take a good part of 12 months before they're fully on the ground. We already have the skill set in place. We have the people who are experienced with what's actually there. By splitting this role, we're able to achieve everything we want without any of the delay. So that's number one. The other one major thing is we have this ability to avoid the key man issue, something that came up when Peter suddenly left the company, and that we don't want to be in a similar situation. So if anything were to happen and neither one of us were able to fulfill the role, we can step in and on an interim basis keep the company running without causing any problems. The final one is it allows us to, in times of great need, to basically get 48 hours out of each day. You have two people able to work full time for short periods of time is able to actually accomplish a great deal when the needs are there. So really, these things all bring great strengths into the company. Both of us. I'm certainly familiar with the role through my interim process and also the CSO role, and Phil has become increasingly aware of the commercialisation as he's been involved in the process since he's joined. So I think it's a real great opportunity and something that would be very difficult to replicate in a single individual in the CEO role. There are very few people out there that have both the scientific and the commercial background required to lead a biotech. And they're not easy to find. This way we were able to make a virtual person that has all the skills that we need to achieve on our plans.
I think we're equally providing and building a Sydney nexus to Race Oncology. So we're, of course, Sydney-based, so we're already easily spending time together, even through COVID. It's very easy to get together, and that's working for us. We're an interesting business model, as I've learned. I mean, we're pretty light on people, frankly, but we've got an amazingly skilled board internationally. We've got access, and we have engaged the best advisors from around the world, and we're a very light SGA structure. So it's a pretty good program for shareholders, and it's one that really allows us to operate optimally, and we're going to do that going forward.
We're an unusual company, I think, within the space, but we're very focused on the shareholder return. Everything that we do is to get a return for the shareholders, and we're very reluctant to dilute shareholders. We only take capital when we need it and to achieve the aims that we wish to achieve. And I think it's been reflected in the last few months, where we've really taken on just the amount of capital required to get us to get through to what we need to achieve. So we're well funded over the next 18 months to do and lead on all the particular plans we have ahead of us.
So it's going to free Daniel and I up to lead, if you like, executing the strategy that's well known and well understood, I think, by our shareholders, funded, as Daniel said. But equally, coming back to John, it frees John up operationally to do what he does well, which is hopefully to partner with the pharmaceutical business in the US, where many of the players who will look at us attractively can then take advantage of what's in front of all of us. So that one, I think, is one that John's going to have an important role to do, and the capacity and the bandwidth to do exactly that.
This is critically important. That John's role in the company is, our aim is to achieve a commercial transaction. John, that's his bread and butter. That's what he's done. He's done hundreds of these transactions, billions of dollars of deals, and he needs to focus on doing that, not worrying about paying invoices or things like this.
My clients will typically engage the firm with a view to constructing strategy. Now, the first task for us is to run a 360-degree review of the portfolio of the client and assess their preparedness for a transaction. And generally, there's a good amount of work to be done in that regard. Particularly the clinical and regulatory plan needs to be mapped out closely. On the back of well-developed and defined plans and validating data, typically clinical data, we're then able to run a process. A list of candidate acquirers for the asset or the company is identified. Corporate materials are generated by us and a process is launched. I've been associated with several $1 billion of transactions value in the life sciences, first at Sanofi, the French multinational, and then at Torreya Partners, a New York-based investment bank and financial advisory. Calling out some relevant transactions from the perspective of Race, my firm was associated with the licensing of a targeted immune oncology technology from Seattle-based Kineta into Pfizer for a total consideration of over $500 million. Also, we sold the royalty rights for an advanced chemotherapy formulation from a specialty pharmaceuticals group based here in the United States through to OrbiMed, one of the leading private equity groups in the life sciences. My firm was associated with Australia's largest phase 1 transaction at the time, with the corporate acquisition of Fibrotech by Shire Pharmaceuticals, leading to an upfront payment of $75 million. Well, we're close and we're getting closer. Race is arguably one clinical trial away from having a validated program, and we're addressing that now. Our core asset, bisantrene, generated compelling clinical data in the advanced acute myeloid leukemia setting, or AML, and that was reported to the market just last month. Those were the first clinical data generated with bisantrene for well over 20 years, and they provided clinical validation that's been appreciated both by the clinical investigator community and our investors. Building off that momentum, we've now launched an expanded phase 2 clinical program, and that will have interim data in 12 to 15 months and definitive data the following year. Moreover, the company is comprehensively mapping its clinical programs in pediatric or childhood AML and other leukemia settings, as well as breast cancer and broader solid tumor oncology indications. Finally, we've recently announced a finding that bisantrene exquisitely inhibits a critical pathway for leukemia progression, the so-called FTO pathway. And this requires comprehensive assessment, but it has the capacity to genuinely recalibrate bisantrene value. So all that by way of saying that our value proposition at Race is building. And with that, I firmly believe interest will follow from the corporate development and acquisitions professionals at major biopharmaceutical companies that I regularly interact with. Now, we'll certainly be doing our level best to make sure that that's the case and checking in with those counterparts regularly as our clinical program unfolds.
Very few companies have John on their board, someone with that skill set. And it's one that Australian biotechs in particular really struggle with breaking through doing a commercial deal. Small biotechs really struggle. We're a long way from the rest of the world. And to get on the radar of the big players, you have to have something extraordinary, which I think we do. But also equally, you have to have the right people in place able to actually get that attention of the key opinion leaders in this space. Otherwise, it's all for nothing. We can generate great clinical results, but if we don't deliver and don't turn that into a commercial outcome, it's why bother? There's a number. One of the great beauties of the 5-path strategy that we have is we have multiple activities going on at all times. So we have coming up, we have a new trial in Israel, a larger phase 2 trial of around 30 patients, and that's due to start towards the end of the year. November is the current target for that. We also have an IND process well underway and highly well advanced that will open up the ability to run clinical trials in the US in pediatric oncology and also for AML in the MRD space, which we've spoken about previously. The other thing that's the unexpected is the FTO story that came out of the City of Hope, and that really does drive a great deal of potential. And I think this is something that many outside observers have yet to realise the true value of the FTO story for the company going forward. It opens up many opportunities. We hope to be able to share those opportunities with the shareholders over the coming months. So there's a lot to look forward to as far as activities.
And I'm now 3 months into working with Race. I came in as an investor. I've learned a lot in 3 months, and that's why I've in fact invested again. But importantly, I've accepted this role and this opportunity because I feel like the combination of Daniel leading science, myself commercially, those are complementary skills, and they're going to allow us to execute on the significant opportunities that our strategy allows. So I'm very much looking forward to it.
And me too.
Excellent. That was good. So the